Jeff is back today with his cat. Now we're really going to see what draws ratings. Is it Jeff and his cat? Is it Zach Meisel and his intricate knowledge and stories of the Cleveland Guardians franchise and managerial search?
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $500. Get $5. Yeah, customers can bet $5 to get $200 of bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Just gonna sit here and try to use the cat to see how that helps the ratings.
The cat doesn't want to be here. Doesn't look like if you're watching on YouTube or on fast channels, the cat doesn't want to be here.
She's hanging out in my lap. She just didn't want to be held up like that. But yeah, it's nice to be back. For those who want the behind the scenes thing, we didn't want to ask Zach to stay late. We're actually recording this after those interviews. I got to do bedtime. That's life. Any parent out there understands. Sometimes you got to do bedtime. Hopefully we will get a chance to talk with him in the future. But we appreciate Zach for coming on. We should have TJ on.
Balance it out.
But it's good to be back. Good to talk about Princeton basketball great Will Venable. That's what he went to college for. It was not baseball. It was basketball.
That's a good thing.
We got arbitration. And should we talk about the dumbest thing of the past week? We'll just start there. So I sent out some very angry tweets because people were like, the Guardians are going to trade Jose Ramirez. And I'm like, where is this coming from? They're not. He's on a super team friendly deal and he has 100% no trade clause. That was one of the big reasons he did that deal, because he was going to be traded to San Diego. I have that on pretty good authority that there was a deal in place with San Diego. It was kind of a last ditch. Let's see if we can get a contract done. He didn't want to leave, and he left a lot of money on the table because this is where he wanted to be. This is where he is comfortable. He has no willingness to go anywhere. John Morosi goes on the radio in Seattle and says, hey, they might try to talk with Cleveland about Jose Ramirez. That's just someone like throwing a name. But it's also, listen, John Morosi is a great reporter. He is a great sideline reporter. Isn't he the one who's bilingual, speaks with players about their languages? There's reasons to give him a lot of credit, give him his time and due. And, I say this as a Guardians fan who sometimes has rough takes because the Twins annoy me. I'll be the first to admit that. I'm a Guardians fan first. Morosi's a Tigers fan. I'm sure he would love Jose Ramirez to be out of the division. Go look at his Twitter. When I was trying to find exactly where this quote was or what article it's from, it was all about Tiger stuff. He's a Tigers fan first. And I think it kind of showed in the who can Seattle acquire? And especially because you get Jose Ramirez, Suarez is already ingrained for them at third base. It doesn't even make sense for Seattle. Of all of their needs, it's not third base. So it was just silly on a lot of levels. And it meant I got a lot of scared, angry tweets, and it just annoyed me for that reason.
That was an interesting one. I want to go back and say first, thanks for Zach for joining us the last couple episodes to do all that. And he didn't have to do that because obviously they do a great job in the Selbius Godcast, and you should be listening to them. You should be subscribed to them on YouTube, as I said. But we appreciate Zach being able to lend his insights with us and, answer some questions maybe we can't the way we cover the Guardians on this show. So I really appreciate him being willing to jump on and do a little crossover and just kind of share the space with us. Because, look, you're not getting a lot of Guardians talk on Cleveland radio and other places. So you're going to get it from the Selbius Godcast and The Athletic, and you're going to get it from us. So, it's nice to be able to coexist in that space and how great those guys are. The only you talk about the Eugenio Suarez thing with Seattle and how that was a salary dump. Maybe that's just how Cleveland gets rid of Miles Straw. You have to attach Jose Ramirez in order to get rid of Miles Straw. Maybe that's what John Morosi was thinking. No, John Morosi's fine. Yes, he's a great bilingual on-field guy. He seems like a really nice dude too. So I don't want to disparage him too much. But yeah, just throwing that comment out there, the Guardian Cleveland has never given anybody even a partial no trade clause. They've gotten to the point where guys got 10-5 rights with them. but they've never given anybody in the contract intentional no trades, whether it was partial or full. And Jose, look, this deal wasn't going to happen without Jose getting. We've read the story from Zach. Zach wrote the story that Jose Ramirez got off the bus and he met with team officials and said, "What can we do to make a deal?" He got his agent to the table with them. Like, this guy did everything he could to drag the Guardians to the table to sign a deal and take it for under market. And then he also insisted on a full no trade clause so they could never trade him. So what on earth would possess any reporter, especially one that actually has a reputation like John Morosi, to say that they should, like the comments were like, "Oh, if I could wave my magic wand to make one trade." Well, of course, there's a lot of franchises that would love to make it so Cleveland had to trade Jose Ramirez, and that's just not going to happen. So, like, I don't understand why even throw that out there. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me to even throw that out there, unless you're just bored and you need to make up something to talk about on MLB Hot Stove on December 10th when winter meetings are over. It makes no sense.
It was so many levels of silly. I had a Seattle fan, I'm not going to say who's also a sports journalist, who reached out to me when I tweeted that and was like letting me know, like, it was he's like, "I think Ohtani is more likely." And it felt like an unbelievable reach, even hearing it on the airways, was how that Seattle-based person, took the time to DM me. Not someone I talk with regularly either. Just reach out and be like, "Hey, yeah, that's ridiculous." So there is that. Should we, before we go to break?
Also, real quick, not even to bring up too that he mentioned that, oh, well, they're, Terry Francona's moving on. So, like, he even put that wedge in there to make it seem like he thinks that Cleveland will trade away their best player because their manager's moving on. Like, I don't think
it's not a fire sale. Let's just
not a fire sale. I've heard people try to act like this is going to be a fire sale. Like, if you listen to the second episode of Zach on the Managerial Search, he said, like, this is a unique managerial situation. The Guardians expect to win in 2024. They have a roster that, even though it was a bumpy 2023 season, there's still enough pieces in place where you should expect to be a contending team in 2024. And you don't really usually have a managerial search after that. So Jose Ramirez isn't requesting a trade because Terry Francona is gone. I think Jose Ramirez knew at some time in his tenure Terry Francona wouldn't be his manager. So I just, again, maybe we don't know anything. I know people have said in the past that we make too many broad assumptions that we know more than we do. And so maybe they will trade him at some point, but the only reason he gets traded is because he agrees to it. Like, Jose has to agree to any trade if there's something coming up. So it would have to be on Jose's end, not the Guardians' end. I just don't see the Guardians wanting to even do that in the first place. Like, I just don't see it. It just made no sense to me.
Yeah, I don't see it happening either. And like I said, he seems very content with all aspects of his life and where it is right now. So I can't see that happening. As we kind of handle some other odds and ends, should we go ahead and talk some Jim Poole for a bit here as well?
Yeah, real quickly, Jim Poole, unfortunately, over the weekend, before we recorded, passed away after a battle with ALS. Pitched for a lot of teams in his career, and one of them was the Indians in the 90s. He was part of those good teams, and ALS is a very tough and unfortunate thing to be.
8 organizations. Cleveland was the most years and his third highest innings. He had a 126 ERA plus in Cleveland. Like, he was really good in Cleveland. He was
hard to face as a lefty. There was not a whole lot of matchups he didn't win as a lefty. They relied on him. Him and Paul Ossenmacher were a good 1-2 in terms of the lefty one-out guy. He made a great career of that. I mean, guys can pitch long careers based on that, and it's just a shame that
he's very
taking that from professional. I mean, it just shows you the ALS is it's so tough, and we need better advancements in medical research. That even there's no explanation for a guy who was an athlete for how many years to end up with that and lose his life so soon.
Yeah, and you have the whole thing, like, also in the same week where Chris Snow, the assistant general manager of the Flames, who was in his 40s, passed away from. At least in that case, it was a genetic component. So, like, he had multiple family members. I don't know if that's the case with Jim Poole, but we saw, Tim Wakefield for cancer this week. It was a big, unfortunate week when it came to disease, but there were 2 with ALS, and Jim Poole was just incredibly valuable for this team for a long, well, not a long time, for 4 years, but that was a hard role to fill. He came back and he was successful, and it's, not bad for a guy who was a 9th round pick of the Dodgers in 1988 out of Georgia Tech, and he ended up pitching 363 innings, 431 games, had a really good run. So that was just wanted to give him some of his shine and his moment on the show today.
Yeah, condolences to the family of Jim Poole. And like they always say, when you're battling a disease like that, you live through, or you're remembered how you battled. You know, he didn't lose his fight. He battled valiantly. So yeah, condolences to the Jim Poole family. October baseball is here. It's not back. It is here, Jeff. You can make your postseason debut with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The ALCS is coming up. The NLCS is coming up too. So join FanDuel right now, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockdown to create a new account, and then you can get on the action from first pitch until the final out. Bet on everything from strikeouts to home runs to who will win games. And if you don't want to wait the whole game to get that win, predict what's going to happen in the next at bat if you're smart enough with quick bets. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockdown right now. Step up to the plate this postseason with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Make every moment more. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. And of course, continue to listen to all postseason action on your Sirius XM app. Just search for the team and the game you're looking for on the app. All right. Arbitration projections.
Always fun.
Always fun. Can I point out something really quickly too? I'm not to hijack it here real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
MLB Trade Rumors is a valuable resource. Like projected arbitration salaries every year are a great resource. They're always very good with this. Like if it's not the exact number, it's right in that ballpark. They have a good idea. Yeah. And they're good aggregators of news. You can find a lot of good news there. They are social media proof, which is good. There are a lot of things you probably shouldn't take.
Yeah, they're in-depth analysis. Like I hate to.
There are certain writers that are good there. They have writers that are good there.
They do, but listen, I've had so many times where I've been like, hey, yeah, this Guardians write-up is completely off base. Like, oh, they're going to spend this. I remember like people getting mad at me because I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. That like they're basing this off of nothing. They're just assuming they're going to spend because baseball. So yeah. There are good writers. You can
depend on the arbitration projections. You can really depend on those.
Yeah, that's a big thing, and that's what I primarily use it for. When they list the free agents, I don't always necessarily agree with it, but it's good to have it in the list format I can look at.
It's a good resource.
But yeah, I don't know. A lot of the Guardians write-ups have been extremely problematic and off base in the past.
Yeah, just be careful with which information from them you are trusting. I don't say trust. Trusting isn't the right word. It's more.
Listen, we're not perfect. Like, let's put that right out there. No. If you want to be like, hey, you know, it's like, but like, if you really want to treat it like an inside information, unless it's coming from like Zach or like Andre or to a lesser degree Paul Hoynes, like that's about it for inside information. It's pretty tight ship there, and you're not going to hear a whole lot. And don't treat anything from anyone else as inside information, us included. For us, it's just looking at historical precedent. We're not inside.
We tell you what we think and what we know, which may or may not be more than MLB Trade Rumors. So they're doing the same thing. I just feel like, just always be careful who you hit your wagon to, I guess is
us included.
Us included. Absolutely. Yeah. We're not, like you said, we're not perfect, and we don't have all the answers either, which is why Zach was on here, because Zach has more answers. So one answer I hope we get right. Oh my God. I love arbitration. Like Sam Henches and Nick Sandlin and Eniel De Los Santos are all projected to get around the same salary as Cam Gallagher in arbitration. Like, I think we can agree Cam Gallagher's not keeping
Cam Gallagher. Cam Gallagher is here to stay.
This is why MLB's pay structure is so broken, that arbitration can only go up. It can't go down. It can be, you can get almost the same, but
that will never change. That'll never change. That's something the players fought for.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the players might, if they were really smart, the players would go after being paid what they're worth as a young player versus getting paid for what they did in the past. Like that would get them more but that's such a big change to undertake. But it's just funny to me, like Cam Gallagher, MLB Trade Rumors has him projected at 1.3 in arbitration. I don't think it's going there with Cleveland, but it's just mind-boggling.
What
That guy
happened
had the worst season ever, and
Yeah.
De Los Santos, Henches, and Sandlin are all right in that same range with him. It's just mind-boggling.
It's because he's at year 5. Like that's all it is. He is at year 5. He is a year
Right, but
out
how does
from
that make sense?
It doesn't. But I'm explaining it. I'm not explaining how it makes sense. I'm explaining the why, not the nonsensical what. It doesn't make any sense because that is unfortunately how these things work. But yeah, it's just because he's at year 5. That's it. He's at year 5, and most of that other grouping is in year 3, which is the first chance they have to earn money. So it's that.
Yeah, you've got a couple super
all
twos
it
on
is.
there. Yeah, Shane Bieber at 12.2. That makes a lot of sense. That'll be interesting to track. The one that stands out to me, like, okay, Cal Quantrill, they're gonna tender him a contract for sure, no matter what.
I thought 6.6 was low for him.
Yeah, no, I mean it's in a good range. I'm just saying, like, it's not. I mean, I know he was injured a lot this year and didn't pitch all that well before the injury, and after the injury he was much better. But I mean, that's a figure. I mean, what if they decide to trade in this offseason, or if someone wants him in a trade? That's another point. But they're going to tender him a contract. Josh Naylor at 7.2. They'll tender him that. The questions are, like, okay, they should non-tender Cam Gallagher, obviously. 99, 1.9, and then Ramon Laureano is the one that's interesting to me. I think there's a spot for him next year, but he's at 4.7 million in projection. And that Miles Straw contract is not good.
And getting worse by the day.
It's getting worse by the day. And it's like, unless they can, well, there is no unloading Miles Straw because you have to take a bad contract back to do it. So it doesn't make sense. So I don't know, like, are they going to pay Ramon Laureano 4.7 million? Like, is Miles Straw's contract going to be a hindrance to that at this point?
No, because I think what happens, honestly, here is I think they sit down and there's a talk, and the realization is that he won't get 4.7 on the open market because he passed through waivers at 4 million and got to Cleveland, which was at the time pretty low down the list. I think there's a world where you can figure out a way to maybe see if you can get him to take 3.5, 3.7. This is why you negotiate, right? This is why you have those negotiations and try to get someone to sign. I think he is a classic example of like that. Like, you should be trying to get him signed and locked up at a lower rate / value.
Okay, so essentially Laureano, though, is a fourth outfielder. Like, he is probably a guy, like, you're good with starting him if you have an injury and, like, okay, this player, Miles Straw, whoever, is out for 3 weeks with a hamstring strain, whatever. And Laureano, you're going to plug in Laureano for a couple weeks to make up the injury. I think that's fine. But I feel like he's not, like, we know what he does well. If you look at his numbers against lefty, he crushes lefties. That's a good role for him. He can be a Jordan Luplow or a Ryan Rayburn type or a Brandon Guyer type. That's fine. I just wonder, like, are you willing to pay even what you said, 3.5 million? Is that, we talked about how the Giants can paper over a lot of issues because they can pay for things, even though they don't have like a super star-studded roster. Like, this would be a move the Giants would make.
No,
like,
3.5 isn't that much relative
when you're paying Miles Straw that contract, though,
I know, but like, if you're there is a world where he is this team starting a part of this outfield next year. So I don't think you look at just like Miles Straw. I think we have to be rational and realistic that Stephen Kwan is one of the outfielders. Manzardo is likely, there's a chance they might decide. And listen, I want to give a shout out to one of our everydayers in the comments, R3I3, who very nicely pointed out, and he has a good reason why he disagrees on Manzardo and why you would not call him up, rather service time. And also pointed out, by the way, you're wrong. Foreign free agents don't count for those bonus draft picks. But he left a whole, like, nicely worded paragraph in depth. And there's a world where, Manzardo, they decide that, listen, he's probably not going to win Rookie of the Year because first basemen get devalued. Like, if he has a year as good as Tristan Cassis had, Tristan Cassis probably isn't going to finish top 3 for the award. So it's like first basemen tend to be devalued. So if they decide not to run him out there for the first month or so for service time, they're not going to add 2 bats. If we're lucky, this team adds 1 bat. So, Laureano, Straw, hey, if you're combining to pay them like $9 million, that's still a bargain compared to it. Again, I know that'd be if you could get league average production, and you're not from that combo, unfortunately. But I think there's a world where Laureano is a starter next year. And if you can get that for under $5 million, that's a decent value. And, he played very well in the second half against lefties or righties. He does have some seasons with higher level production. If he can be close to a league average bat, then that's probably worth the price of admission.
Yeah. I've got some thoughts on that. I'll share on just a second.
Our fantastic sponsor today are our good friends over at Jase. I'm going to pull up and show you my Jase case. I filled out the paperwork for Jase to get my life-saving antibiotics because you never know when you're going to need them. You never know when something can pop up. I've talked about my own situations in the past. You might be able to hear my sinus issues right now. The back and forth of fall is always brutal for me, and the ability to have antibiotics on hand, because that's about the only thing that helps. It would get to the point where it is so bad that I am just in pain every night. Having the ability to kind of empower myself to treat myself is huge. And that's what Jase can do for you. So you go online, fill out a form, and you get your prescription of life-saving medication sent right to your door. Get $20 off on these life-saving antibiotics today from Jase Medical by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's Jase Medical. That's JASE medical.com.
And check out all the playoff action on your SiriusXM app. Just search in whatever team you're trying to listen to. Yeah, Laureano, like the first half, if you want to go into the next season and say, okay, like we'll commit to Laureano because you'll get Stephen Kwan and maybe you add another outfielder externally and you say, okay, this other spot we're going to save for Laureano to play him against. Hopefully it's to play him against lefties, and hopefully it's to use him as a defensive replacement or a pinch runner because he does those things well too. So he brings some good qualities. I'm not saying he's not worth $3.5 million. I think he is, but like if you want to add someone externally, we'll have to talk about this in the future. But what does that cost money wise or roster space wise? You know, Stephen Kwan is in year 2 or year 3. The Miles Straw contract has impacts. Like I don't think you can deny. Like,
no, it's just going to get worse and worse. Yeah,
right. So I don't know. It's hard for me to believe unless they commit to more money next year that they're going to pay that money for both Laureano and Straw. But I mean, I agree with you. Laureano deserves a spot. I think there's things he can do to help this team win. I would say like if you have a guy you can platoon him with, is it Will Brennan? I don't know. Like.
Will Brennan isn't really a platoon
or
to anything.
Yeah, but like for me, Laureano is a first half placeholder to acquiring someone better, or you know, if things really broke as well as you hope, Jase Medical. Like if you want to save room to hope he's ready at the end of next year, I don't know. Like Laureano's fine as a stopgap bench guy, like in a vacuum. But based on, like we talked about, like we based a lot of our knowledge on here based on what we've seen this franchise do historically and how they operate. And how they operate to me doesn't feel like Miles Straw's contract in first place. They screwed that up. And number 2, also paying Ramon Laureano $3.5 million on top of that. Like on his own, that'd be fine. It just based on historical precedent, it just seems like a lot. But maybe I hope I'm wrong because I'd like to see Laureano come back next year. I think he makes sense, but I have doubts. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean he's limited, but I just feel like this team isn't going to go out and
it's not about him. It really is just about Miles Straw to me. It's about those 2 salaries coexisting.
You're stuck with Miles Straw. So you can't let Miles Straw be what stirs the drink. You have to view that as a sunk cost. And if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. But you can't. I think you can't bring him into the calculus because he's just a giant black hole in terms of the calculus. Listen, he's well liked on the team, so that's why it doesn't make sense. And you're also not going to find a matching contract that is in that weird in between value. So you're just it's a sunk cost. You're stuck. On the rest of this list, very quickly, Bieber with the small rise because it was not a great year, but still that 12.2 sticks out on this team, and it's part of the reason why again I think he is traded this offseason still.
That's how you make the contract work with Laureano. You trade Bieber, right?
Well, I don't even think it's about that. It's, you know, if you want to try to get an upgrade, you probably have to trade Bieber to maybe get that upgrade or to have money to find a way to get that upgrade because the 12.2 is a lot. And I'm going to point out again, a lot of people are focused on velocity, the performance. 2 out of 3 years, he's not been able to, he's missed more than half the year for 2 of the last 3 years. That's the red flag, not performance. The health is the red flag with him because there's a great chance next year he could be hurt the whole year or a good chunk of the year again, and then you're getting nothing for him. You can't run that gamble. You can't.
And Cleveland's good at getting out before things get like that. So that's maybe a historical precedent to follow.
And then for everyone who's like, why don't you talk about Josh Naylor extension? He's at 7.2 million. That's just going to keep going up. He's got a high value. He has no reason to sign an extension. He's getting 7.2.
He's a Super 2 guy.
Yeah, he has no reason. That's in year 4. He's got 2 more years left. By the end of this, he could be approaching 20 million if he has 2 more years like this. There's no reason for him to sign an extension. There just isn't, unless it is a bad extension for a team. Let's talk Will Venable, because we said we'd do that. Like I said, he actually, I'll throw this out there. He went to Princeton. That's where he met Chernoff. They played on the baseball team, but he went because he wanted to play on the basketball team. The basketball team was really good at the time. They made the NCAA almost every year. His future teammate Chris Young was the only other Ivy League player to ever be named All Ivy in both basketball and baseball. They played together at San Diego. He was a pretty big dude. I want to say I don't have his actual measurements, but he was a big athletic outfielder who kind of surprised to some degree. He had some good years, and again, he has a connection. The one thing I'll say on him that is interesting is he has bounced around a lot as a coach. Like his biggest run was, I guess that Cubs early one, but he has been 2-3 years, then move on. 2-3 years, move on. He's with Texas right now. And since Bob Nightingale said that he is the favorite, you can almost write it down that he is not going to be Cleveland's next head coach, right?
Yeah. Speaking of sources, you want to be careful about taking as fact. Yeah, Bob Nightingale. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to go there. I think there's a connection there. We've already heard the name, right? Like obviously he has the relationship with Chernoff. And how can you forget the memorable stint that Will Venable had in Cleveland as a spring training invite? He lasted with Cleveland from February 28th, 2016 to March 27th, 2016. That was obviously a very memorable and lengthy run in his career.
Did you know that he's a second generation major league player? His dad was also a major leaguer.
So are we also? So Cleveland likes bloodlines in terms of draft picks that extend to. Well, hey, Terry Francona's dad was a player, so I guess maybe that extends to the manager thing too.
And his older brother was an NFL player, so
wow.
But much like Terry, Tito was kind of better than the son, and I think Max did most of his damage actually in the JPL. I think that's where he was, or was he Korean leagues? Maybe I can't remember, but yeah, he's a name to know because he just has natural connections. So he is the candidate who doesn't actually have direct ties history in the organization, which is kind of interesting that he doesn't. You'd have thought that if they liked him so much, they would have. He was Alex Cora's bench coach, and then I'm not sure exactly what his role is with Texas.
He's the associate manager for the Rangers to Bruce Bochy. If you listen to the first 2 episodes with Zach, he talked about how important maybe a history with the organization is. And you're right, Venable doesn't have the extended history with the organization, but he does have connections. He does have here for one spring training with Chernoff. It is funny that Terry Francona always talked about how I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. Venable went to an Ivy League school, so he is going to be the smartest guy in a lot of cases. If that, obviously Mike Chernoff went to Princeton, so they're smart too. That's a very interesting change in dichotomy. But I'm sure he's learned a lot from Bruce Bochy. He was with the Cubs for a couple of years. I'm sure he learned a lot. I mean, he was there with Joe Madden, obviously, before David Ross took over. He's been with Alex Cora, who some of those guys also have ties to Cleveland. Alex Cora's got ties here a little bit. I'll be curious to see what happens. And they can't talk to him until after the Rangers are knocked out, which they had a first 2 games against the Orioles. They look like they're going to move on. So it could be a while, which is why I think the search might take a while, because they're not going to, unless they find their guy before then, they're going to wait until everybody's knocked out, probably, if there's guys they want to talk to, and that includes Will Venable, which they might have to wait some time on.
Yeah, there's no reason to rush it, right? There's absolutely no reason to rush it.
Got to get it right.
And if you lose out, you lose out. You don't want to just sit there and make a decision because you're afraid the candidate you like might get away. There should be multiple good candidates when you get through the end of it. And yeah, it'd stink if maybe your favorite candidate after going through all of it goes elsewhere, but that's why you go through this process, to make sure you can know who are the names to know. And I think they're doing it right.
Is Will Venable serious? Should we Carlos Mendoza? I don't know. who was the other guy we talked about?
Craig Abernas.
Craig, yeah. Yeah, I can't even get his name right. So I don't know. It's not going to look good if he's the manager.
I could pretend I'm him and just start yelling at you again.
Yeah. Oh no, I'll never come on Locked On Guardians. That's for sure.
No, he
probably doesn't remember me. No.
So
I think he's a serious candidate, though. I think
the best part about that was hearing from other people that they had similar experiences. So just hey.
Yeah, we definitely want to be careful about that. So, by the way, Will Venable's middle name is Dion, so potential to have 2 Will Dions in the organization.
Yeah, and maybe both up at the same time. You just have some fun with that.
Yeah, you never know. Speaking of minor leaguers, really quickly, I wanted to point out too, Chase DeLauder over the weekend. Since we're recording this on Sunday, and you're not going to hear this till Wednesday, but over the weekend, Chase DeLauder had 102, I can't remember what he had a really good weekend exit velocity wise. They played at Salt River Field, which has StatCast data. He had a good weekend exit velocity wise, but I pointed out on Twitter too that the most important thing is he's playing and he's healthy. It's not the result. It's the fact that he's playing and healthy. And Kyle Manzardo had a 106-mile-an-hour double off the bat, even though it had like a negative launch angle.
We had a listener, Carson A. Merck, is his Twitter, who said that they were there last night, and every single time for DeLauder was allowed out for what that is worth. I'll tell you what you are all out there worth. That is a lot for sticking with us and having some fun with us during the offseason. We understand that baseball is a maybe not priority sport-wise right now. So we appreciate all of you for sticking through, jumping through, and staying in every day. As soon as this season ends, we're rooting for sweeps so we can get to the fun of this offseason because it's going to be crazy. It's going to be fun. So tune in for all the pregame work on Locked On Guardians. Thank you all, and go Guardians. Go.